All right, we are back with our very next presenter of the night, the one and only Alan Pastalucci. Take it away,
Hello.
Alan.
Hi, thanks. Very excited to show you some cool stuff tonight. This is going to be kind of developer focused. I'd like to show off the editor that I've been working on, so that's what you can see up above. It's an editor for a game engine that I'm making. And then off to this side is a MIDI controller that I have hooked up to my editor. So that's kind of the gist of what I want to go over. Just a quick overview for those of you who didn't go to the Dirty Rectangles 2 months ago. That's where I kind of introduced this project that I've been working on, which is a vector-based video game engine that renders on an oscilloscope. So you can see here, this is unchanged from the last Dirty Rectangles. It's just a quick little demo game that I put together. So this is rendering on an oscilloscope. So I'm making an editor now for this game engine. I'm using a library called Dear ImGUI. It's an immediate mode GUI system, which means that I can run it on the same thread as my game engine, where my game engine ticks, and then I tick the editor and its entire GUI. And it goes through and draws itself, and then I tick my game engine and tick the GUI, tick the game engine, tick the GUI. And the nice thing about that is it means that I don't need to worry about any multi-threading nonsense. So I am using, as you can see here, this is ImGUI. I'm going to go over a quick overview of how my game engine works. And then I'll get to the MIDI controller and how I've integrated that and what I've learned about that integration. So the engine it's built with the entity component system paradigm. I'm not going to go into too much detail about that, but the idea is you have entities which are basically just links between components. So the components are where all of game state is stored. They do not have any logic or any smarts or any like no functions or methods or whatever you want to call them. They are just data, basically. In the most extreme example of an entity component system, the components will be nothing more than just structs. And then your systems are where all the logic happens. So these are all your functions. Each system ticks one after the other. And the great thing about an entity component system, the thing that I love about it, is that you can really, really tightly control the order of execution of everything that's happening in your game because you have that kind of that system order kind of strictly defined. So yeah, this editor. So I'm using Dear ImGUI, which is a C++ library, but there's actually a .NET wrapper for it because my engine is built entirely in .NET using C Sharp. Yeah, so that means that I can do a whole bunch of stuff with reflection, which makes things super, super easy and trivial to do all this cool stuff with an inspector and all that sort of thing. Yeah, so you can see here a list of entities and components. Yeah, each of these entities will have components attached to them. Some of them, the ones in bold here, actually don't have transforms to them. So this is different than Unity, where game objects always have a transform. In my engine, you don't need to have a transform on an entity. Sometimes you have just like a simple, just single component. There might be some other cases of that. Maybe not. Yeah, so that's when you select an object, whether it's a component or an entity, you can see the properties on that. So, for example, scale, position, all this kind of stuff. And this is all just done through reflection, and it becomes pretty easy to use reflection in C# just to populate an inspector where I can see all of these properties for anything that I have selected. Yeah, and I can just go and modify these things by clicking and dragging. And I'll just talk quickly. Just here's the scene graph. A scene graph is exactly as you'd expect. You know, it shows all the different objects in their hierarchy, and I can move them around and parent things if I wanted to. When you select a transform, it'll select it in the entity view. When you select an entity that has a transform, or the transform of an entity, it'll select it in the scene graph view. So it all turned out pretty nice. And Dear ImGUI is really, really, really nice to work with. Okay, so that's the gist of the editor. Property inspector. If you've used Unity, it's pretty similar to that in that sense. Yeah. So when I was working on this editor, one of the things that I had in my mind, in the back of my mind, was a blog post that William Cheer, who made Manifold Garden, he wrote this blog post about how he used a MIDI controller to control values in the Unity editor and control basically configure the game and be able to adjust different float values using like physical knobs, like you can see on the MIDI controller here. So I wanted to do that. And that also allows me to, so let's say I can assign, let's take maybe the root of the playership. I'm going to assign, and these are actually clickable knobs. So I click one of the knobs, and that puts me into assign mode, and I can assign any of these properties. So I'm going to assign the scale to these three knobs. So you can see that they've actually appeared here in my little MIDI controller thing. So now I can go and adjust the scale of this playership using these knobs. I also use this slider here as a scale. So it's like the step size. So every time I turn this knob, when I turn the slider down, that means that my knob is basically doing very precise kind of scaling. I can go on the other axis too. Or if I turn the knob up, then it's much less precise. So little bits of turns will do a lot more. And that's kind of my solution to the fact that MIDI only gives me 127. Well, normally it'll give me 128 different positions as you turn that knob around. But what I'm doing is I'm actually saying every single time I turn the knob, I send a signal back to the MIDI controller saying, hey, go back to center. So I turn the knob, go back to center. I turn the knob, go back to center. And I just record what the delta is. So that way I can turn this knob infinitely and continue to receive, for every little step along that knob, continue to receive the deltas as I turn it. And let's say this was a MIDI controller that had physical, I actually don't know the terminology off the top of my head, but let's say this was kind of like a fixed, a physical knob that you couldn't turn past 0 or you couldn't turn past maximum. In that case, I wouldn't be able to do this, but these are fully digital knobs. And because they're digital, I can send that information back to the knob to reset its position, its MIDI position, and I can do this kind of like infinite scrolling. So that's what I really like about this MIDI controller that I bought. It was like $80. So it's not like a super expensive MIDI controller. Yeah, so I don't know, kind of a cool little way to do that. I can also assign booleans. So right now I have the editor automatically sets up the first two buttons. The first one is just a pause, so that just sets time scale to 0. So that's and then the second button is, I'm actually just going to restart the game because you can't really see it because the whole scene moves away from the camera right at the beginning. So the second one is the editor camera. So the editor camera, so I've turned this on, and I'm just using an Xbox controller to control the editor camera. So this is my editor camera. It's a separate camera in the list here. You can see it down at the bottom. It is turned on and off quite easily by just hitting this button that I have mapped to the enabled property of the editor camera. And one of the things that I realized when I was making this MIDI controller window here is, as I'm listing these, well, it'd be actually really nice to have a hotkey kind of, or a button to go to the object that owns this property. So like this one, this is the game time component, which has a paused, and that's what pauses and unpauses the game. I can click on this header, and that takes me to the object that owned the property that is linked on the MIDI controller. And I can hop back to the editor camera. So here I am back at the editor camera. And as I was doing this, I kind of realized that, hey, you know what? Like one of the things that I don't have when I'm working in Unity is the ability to quickly move or modify different objects kind of all at the same time in the same window. And what I've accidentally created with this editor just by happenstance was, oh, now this is suddenly kind of like a property inspector that combines properties from lots of different components and objects that are in the game engine. So now suddenly, like, let's assign some more of these. Well, yeah, we had the player ship transform. Oh, that was the position, but we want the scale. Like I can assign a bunch of these things. Maybe this spire here, we want the rotate speed to be mapped. And now I have a whole bunch of these properties that I can kind of access in one window that I've just managed to kind of combine together just by assigning them with my MIDI controller. And now I don't need to go and find them in my scene graph or in my entity and component list. They're all just like right here. Like these are the ones that I care about right now for the editing that I'm doing. And so I can go and adjust those. So that's actually kind of like a thing that I stumbled upon when I'm making this editor that wasn't really to do with the MIDI controller at all, but was more just to do with editor GUI design. Yeah, so that's kind of the... I'm just wondering if there's anything else in this demo that I want to show. Yeah, I can unpause the game and you can see it flying around there as I'm using the editor camera to watch it. And as you can see, it kind of gets away from the editor pretty quick. So I can go back to the game view. Yeah, and that's the idea.
We had a quick question in the chat while we're in here.
Please do.
So Spinley Q is asking, and I don't know if this is possible or not, but can we hear the sound that is generating from the picture on the oscilloscope as you are twiddling the MIDI knobs, so we can hear what it sounds like?
Yeah, give me 2 seconds and I'll get headphones.
Excellent.
It shouldn't take too long. 1 second.
And this is us stretching for time as Alan figures this out. This was an excellent suggestion. Spinley Q coming out with that great internet content. And while Alan's grabbing this stuff, if you've got any other questions for Alan and his super fancy oscilloscope.
I was going to ask about his super fancy cool chair.
Oh my God, look at that chair.
Look at that chair. I don't think you're a game developer unless you got a chair like that.
I've never seen a chair like that before. That's pretty cool.
I think this might be a different oscilloscope from last time too.
Oh.
Oh wow.
There's the fart sound.
Okay. Can you guys kind of hear that?
Yep, definitely.
Okay, it's working then.
Yeah, we can hear it.
I got my volume turned differently. Okay, so let's see what it sounds like. What am I gonna not? Okay, we're definitely gonna want to adjust the time scale. That's a good one.
Oh.
I think we can only hear it like when you talk.
Oh yeah, sorry. Let me turn off. I can fix that. Give me a second here. That's a very good.
You got that audio muting in the background, eh?
There we go. Can you hear it constantly now?
Yes.
I'll try to turn you up a little bit.
Oh wow. You've built a synthesizer.
Yeah, you can kind of hear it changing, eh? As I change the.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's something. Something neat. I'm gonna. Okay, I'm gonna go show a different demo real quick here. So I do just have. So there was. I should mention first. I was actually talking with Spindly Q, Jeremy, last night, and I kind of had it in my head that hey, I can make a little demo. Maybe a demo where I just kind of make it specifically to control like a whole bunch of preset knobs. And Jeremy mentioned, yeah, there's a game like that called Panoramical. And I actually played Panoramical at GDC years and years ago, I'm sure of it, and on a MIDI controller, and I totally had that in the back of my mind subconsciously. So yeah, I made something that's not anything as good as that game because I made it in a couple hours today. Let's go for a bigger view. All right, I'm gonna hook up the audio again because hopefully it's not annoying. Oop-a-doo. Okay.
There's nothing annoying about that sound.
All right,
I think it's beautiful.
All right, so this here, this here is
Oh yeah.
a bunch of different knobs. These are all just properties that are assigned to different, you know, there's like the speed of these discs that are rotating. Yeah, just a whole bunch of random values. I've got this like kind of staticky.
Oh yes.
Yeah, this is the content we're here for.
Yes.
So like I don't know what that is, but yeah, I can kind of just like turn some knobs that do things. What does this one do? Oh, that's my polar coordinates. So I can turn on polar coordinates. Ooh. This one's really. I need to be very like a sensitive.
This is basically EDM, right? This is
yeah,
what that genre is.
Basically, I mean, as far as I'm aware. Yeah. So I don't know. There's something. I'm gonna turn that one off. What was it? Ooh.
Ooh.
Oh wow.
Hey, Alan, I have a
That's
question.
really
If you can hear me,
Yeah.
have you thought about maybe putting the output, the audio through like guitar pedals or distortion pedals, like some sort of other effect to
Oh.
see what happens visually?
That sounds fun. I mean,
Like, what does like, a reverb look like?
right? Yeah, that.
Get some data moshing.
So what I have done is I have sung into it, like spoken into it, and like I can talk for a while on that, but I'm not going to right now because it gets really technical. But yeah, you can do some interesting things. I do like this.
This is great.
I hope you can hear that. Yeah.
I want my keyboard to light up like this when I press a key.
Right.
And make this noise.
Yeah.
So like, what's this one? Oop-a-doo. I'm forgetting what I had assigned to these ones. What do we got here? Oh, interesting. Well, I thought I hooked up a bunch of stuff, but apparently I didn't. Anyway, it's fine. Did I? Yeah, whatever. This is some cool stuff. The rest of that
That's
was
beautiful.
boring anyway. Yeah. So, woo. Yeah. There's the thing. Yeah.
Oh wow! I love
Thanks, Alan.
it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. No worries.
Okay, wait. I think there was some
think
questions in the chat here.
Yeah, of course.
So Tony Cuccoluzzi asks, Alan, are you using NVIDIA audio filtering? Ha ha ha. Oh wait, that was when your thing wasn't working before. So never mind. That's not a great question. But you probably are, right? Are you using
It was just the input sensitivity, like the auto input sensitivity on Discord meant that you guys couldn't hear it, even though like locally it was fine.
Yeah. Oh, that was the only question. This is super dope.
Okay. Yeah. It was just some wild.
There was also how many cameras do you have set up right now?
Oh yeah,
Also,
yeah,
you can tell
yeah.
me.
I've got one. That's my webcam doing like it's 1080p. That one's going 1080p. I've got this one at like a lower resolution, so that's 2. And then I've got my other camera here. So that's like my nice camera in front of the oscilloscope there. Going through a capture card. So it's 3 cameras. My computer is doing a lot of work, plus running OBS, recording it, going to Discord, streaming it to Discord, running my game, which actually uses like a quarter of my processor because I've got it multi-threaded, which is pretty cool.
Wow. That's interesting. So like running on this oscilloscope is actually not something that like do you need like a beefy computer to do what you're doing,
So
or
you need a beefy computer because I have been super lazy. It's the kind of thing where it's like I could spend an extra, I don't know, 10, 100 hours engineering something, or I could spend $200 on a better processor. And like, this is not going out to anybody else. It's literally just for me and my computers, right? So I can be super sloppy with the code. And I have been. I've written some of the worst entity component system stuff that you can imagine. And it's very, very poor performance. But I can afford it.
Who would write super sloppy production code? Who would do that?
Yeah, that doesn't happen in real life.
That's awesome. All right. Any last questions or thoughts from anyone else in the room here?
I got one more for Alan. You were talking last time about how like you could only draw so much. Did you get any more leeway with that?
No, the as I had the engine last time was pretty much the like optimizations on that front aren't optimizations that I'm really gonna get. This is the nature of what I'm working with, and that's kind of what makes it an interesting thing to work with. But yeah, I've got so much time to draw, and that's the amount of time that I have to draw. If I go more than that, if I'm drawing more, then that means the screen's gonna flicker. Yeah.
It's like straight
You
up.
got, Sorry, we got one last good question here from the chat coming from Sis and Chalk. Alan, how dare you?
You're welcome.
and one more question, just to sneak one in here, coming in from Jean LeBlanc. Is it possible to run this on any sort of emulator, or do you actually need the hardware in order for debugging this? Or
yeah, I mean,
that,
so I am building this. My end goal is to make maybe like installation type pieces or things that I'd be taking to a festival, like alt control or something like that. This would be an alt output, but maybe I could make an alt control game using this as an output. So with that goal in mind, it's kind of like a situation where I'm really only building it for myself. And for myself, it's like I have an oscilloscope right here, and it's really fast and easy to work with. In fact, there's no way that an emulator could really give me any benefit when I have this screen sitting right here. Like it's already really nice to work with. So I don't even want to go down that route. But to answer the actual question, yes, of course, there are actually a number of software oscilloscopes that exist, which take what I believe is just like a voltage stream. Or you could also say that that's just an audio stream, right? So with an audio stream, yeah, it'll just like pump that into the software oscilloscope, and then it will emulate. Okay, I don't know what just happened there, but like my ASIO audio interface is not always the greatest, and it just sometimes dies. I need to figure out why. But yes, software emulators for oscilloscopes do exist, and those can be used. And actually, there's some tutorials that were made for the oscilloscope music project by, I think it's Gerald Beam Fenderson. And he, so that actually is an option.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Any parting words from you, Alan, before we move along here?
No, that's what I got.
Hell yeah.
Cool.
Always a pleasure. Alan Pesaluki. I'm sure we'll see you in a month or two with some more crazy oscilloscope antics.
You know it. You know it.
Hell yeah. All right. We'll be back in
Thanks,
just a little bit. We got two more presenters. Let's get some Doritos in the chat for Alan here. And away we go. All right.